So the title of this keynote is App User Experience, how the dark side of product and security can be used for app user stories, misuse use cases, and threat modeling. Our keynote speakers, Lianne Potter and Jeff Watkins, are talking about how to make things better. Please give a warm hand to Lianne Potter and Jeff.
Thank you. Hallo Webinare, wie geht's? Good, good. This is a very interesting turn for me. Now, I'm a security person and I'm being invited first. That's really odd. I'm usually at the end of this process. But thank you so much for inviting me to this conference today to actually start a conference about security. That just never happens. Today, we're going to talk through, as discussed, how to make security easier for you, and that's what I'm here to do today. So let's start with a story. So the ICO recently found a company with a breach which began with a phishing email, which sort of exfiltrated via some unsupported software, which then led to ransomware. Tale as old of time, nothing really new or different there. Even the breach wasn't that bad. It was about 100,000 data subjects, and the stuff that they kind of exfiltrated wasn't that sensitive. But the ICO fined that company 4.4 million, with 1 million being due to the fact that that company had security policies in place, but they got an extra bump of a fine because they were good on paper, but they weren't actually implementing them. And for the industry, the security industry, we kind of all panicked and got, the ICO is now not accepting that companies can just pay lip service to security. We can't just write things down and hope for the best. And this is a massive shift in business. And as a security team, we need to start doing more because we just cannot hide behind what has worked before. And in the backdrop of what's happening internationally around the world, by 2025, it's estimated that 10.5 trillion will be lost to cybercriminals. That's the biggest transfer of wealth in human history. That's more than all the tech billionaires' net worth combined. And as you can see from here, hacking humans is a really lucrative business. And the cybersecurity industry is always striving to be one step ahead of them, but often does that using tools and technology, often neglecting the very human elements of cybersecurity, which is the people side. So let's change that. Today, I am your guide in human-centric security, looking at security and product security. I'm putting that together, making product security. And this is my co-speaker, Jeff.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jeff Watkins. I'm CTO at a company called XDesign, a small consultancy in England. I'm also a tech blogger and a writer, and one thing I've been interested in for a number of years is cybersecurity. I've just actually finished studying MSc in it just now after 24 years away from academia, which I really enjoyed.
And I'm Lianne Potter. I am a cyber anthropologist for the Anthro Securus, which is combining anthropology and cybersecurity together to make better security cultures. I'm also got a technical side. I am the head of security operations for a major supermarket in the UK. So, what about the security tooling? Well, as a security practitioner myself, I'm really pleased that these tools exist. Even being a cyber anthropologist, I'm really pleased these tools exist because we couldn't do the job without them. Particularly things like DevSecOps tools like SAST and DAST, they're really great. But tooling can only get you so far in your security posture journey. And we need to think about layering security, and you really do need to think about that. And it starts with thinking holistically, because it's all about perception. When it comes to security, we need to stop thinking of security as security's problem. Even by calling it a problem, you're kind of mentally framing it and categorizing it as a burden. A problem is unwelcome. A problem is difficult. A problem is something you avoid and you hope someone else will fix. We avoid problems and engage in much easier tasks because that's just the way we're hardwired. But we need to get out of this mindset because good security is a real opportunity to add value to our products and to our customers. And I think a gold standard in security shouldn't mean a compromise on quality, and it shouldn't mean pitching one over the other. We need to get out of this mindset. We need to think like the enemy. Because the cyber criminals are using what makes us human against us. They're becoming ever more sophisticated, ever more nuanced, and they're leveraging the knowledge that they have about us to their benefit. They know that you don't get on with the security team. They know that you do workarounds from the security controls, and they leverage that. And they play upon our inability to effectively collaborate together. We need to fight fire with fire. Because, as I said, the security tools will only get us so far. So for this conference, we're going to show you how you can leverage your best defense, your people. Cybersecurity criminals don't think like we do. They have a different set of objectives to us. In order to thwart the attacks that they're having on us, we need to emulate them. We need to think like them and see what makes them so successful at what they do. And we're calling it the fool around and find out mentality. It was going to be another F word, but we thought for this time of morning we're not going to say that. The cybersecurity ability, a criminal's ability to be able to flip that user journey into the unhappy path is what really makes them successful. And in order to do this, we need to start thinking about how can even the most well-resourced security teams in the world, and you're thinking about your Microsofts and things like that, how can they be taken down so easily? Well, we're going to fool around and find out today and think like a hacker and make sense of what we're building and how to bring everyone into the conversation, not just security, not just your techies, not just your devs, but the whole business. And the best part is, you will already know how to do most of this stuff, because many of the tools and strategies that we're going to talk about today relates a lot to agile methodologies. If you worked in that environment, you will know what to do here. So, welcome to our talk today.
Thank you. So the first part of embracing the abuser experience is something we've all heard about, shifting left. We all benefit from it. It's far easier and faster to design security features in at the beginning rather than testing it in and trying to fix it after the fact and make it really ugly. Shifting left has been deemed so important that in 2021, a new category is added to the OWASP Top 10, insecure design. This focuses on the risks related to design and architectural flaws, and the call for use for more threat modeling, secure design patterns, and reference architectures. Even security's luminaries Sneak note that shifting left has several benefits. Faster overall delivery due to not failing security gates. Reduced cost in rework, improved integration with security tooling, improved overall security posture, and greater trust in the end product, and thus more business success. But for you in the room today, why would it matter for you? Well, it's because you won't spend your evenings and weekends fixing security design flaws. You won't have to trash your beautiful UI design with bolt-on security measures, and you'll have pride in a well-trusted, reviewed, and adopted product. So if we're shifting left, how far left can we go? How about all the way to the product and design elements of the project, long before any coding ever happens? The product, in the modern context, as I'm sure we all know, is the bundle of business value. It's the top-level concern. So in our opinion, we should start considering security at that level. Product security is coming, and it's not going to be one single framework or tool. It's an approach to structuring a security program around the threat modeling of an entire scope of a product. But strangely enough, though, when we're researching this, it's something we're really keen on, actually, product security barely gets mentioned. Books on security don't mention it, really. Books on product don't mention it either, apart from maybe one line. And unhelpfully, when we talk about product security, it can mean two things. First of all, is the actual security of a physical product, such as a phone or a laptop, and then the security of a digital product. And we're talking about the latter today. But how is product security different from application security? Let's compare the security within a product team and the AppSec team in a larger tech company. And the core component of most established cybersecurity teams is a good AppSec program, which Lianne helps run as well at her employer. It ensures that IT applications are developed to a high standard, vulnerabilities are identified and addressed as they arise, and they will usually specify a secure software delivery lifecycle. They'll put the tooling in. It's all pretty technical stuff. And the AppSec team will usually report to the CISO. On the other side, the product security team, they will focus more on designing security into products and will usually report to the CTO. The security experts within the product team will be engaged at every single stage of the product process. They're less concerned with things like network security, security tooling, internal security policies, and also crucially, we believe that thinking in product security terms better enables us to understand the abuser experience.
So the abuser experience, what is it? Well, it's kind of like an evil version of the user experience. It's the kind of anti-user. And to find the abuser experience, we start thinking about who are our abusers. You know, why might they attack us? You know, how can that be expressed in the context of something like threat modeling, for example? So you're talking like Strive, Pasta, and Octave. But contrary to what you might think, the who really, unless in your job title is security researcher, the who's not really that important. Because the who will only get you so far. You know, it doesn't really matter if it's an individual hacker or if it's a big nation state or advanced threat. That doesn't really matter if you're just building something because it's really about how are you going to use what you know about how people get in, not why or the motives, to protect your products and services. So when you're truly thinking about what you need to do, you need to start thinking about the design process in terms of the abuser story version. So getting into that mindset, you need to start thinking in an adversarial way. So attackers, as I was saying earlier, are not motivated like we are. They don't follow rules. You know, they don't have a process or governance like we do. You know, they don't have a CEO they have to kind of appease. They don't have, you know, a boss in the same sense we do to kind of appease as well. And because of that, they're able to think so much more creatively about what they do, and they're able to leverage things that we wouldn't have even considered or think about. Particularly, they look at things like imagining the worst, observing the obvious. They explore every potential access point. They're really into data. They're really into understanding our weakest link, how to exploit things like backdoors. They literally go through our garbage to kind of figure out where are the weak points in our system. And as I say, the most interesting thing about the way we all work differently is a hacker will work differently to an engineer just because it's the way they address the challenge. So when I think about my days when I was a developer, I thought very systematically about how I went about doing things. So I would have a plan in place. I might have a hypothesis of how I want to achieve something. And then I would put that into place. I would test it, look for successes or fails, iterate on that, and then make conclusions. The hacker, however, they don't do spikes like I used to do. They fool around and find out. There's no plan, but a mission. And that mission is completely different to our mission, which is to build something that stands the test of time, that hopefully makes us a bit of money, that hopefully delights our customers. Their mission is to break things, specifically to break into your things. They don't need to consider anything else other than that. And they can discard results willy-nilly and just move on to the next weakest link. So engineers aim to be thorough. Hackers aim to be effective at any cost. And these may seem like minor nuances. However, when you put them all together, they have quite significant implications. And all this sounds a little bit like armchair psychology from the security team. But you have to think, does this mean that this should be security's problem?
Well, first of all, you do need to know whose problem it is. But no, it shouldn't, at least not exclusively, be the problem of the security team. This thinking creates an over-the-wall mentality. I'm sure we've all been there. It creates a gatekeeping situation where the security team have to say, hold on there. Crucially, also ruins any attempt at a lean, agile approach by blocking work and reducing throughput. So, this thinking does not promote any autonomy, mastery, or purpose in the delivery team. And also, security teams just aren't big enough in most organizations, and they end up overloaded. So bring them into your team early, and they can leave you with that autonomy you so desire. And also, we often think that security should be left to the technologists. The technical elements of cybersecurity are incredibly important. After all, it is cyber. But they're only part of the story. By the time security concerns have reached the technologists, they may be more difficult to fix as they weren't designed in from scratch. But more than that, cybersecurity is often not very user-centric, as cybersecurity is not a primary user task. Nobody logs into eBay and goes, well, what I want to do is log in today. And they go, no, I want to buy something. Security is not a primary user task. And as such, it can be inconvenient if implemented poorly, even if it still meets all your security NFRs. So if it's not up to the security team and the technologists alone, who is it then? Well, really, I think you can guess. It should be a whole team concern. But we believe it should start with people like the user researchers and the user experience designers. This means we'll have to think more in terms of form and function than the actual underlying mechanisms. So now we've talked about our team and our attackers' motivations, it's time to discuss some of the techniques to help us start thinking like the enemy. It's time to embrace the dark side of user experience, the abuser experience. And this forms the core of product security. There's a number of tools and techniques we've identified, only a few of which we'll have time to go over today, including, all you can see here, I'm not going to read them all out, but we will go over some of them. We recommend the first time that you try product security techniques to be in a workshop environment, so you can actually do it face to face, and it'll be more fun there as well. Anyway, and start warming up with icebreaker exercises to get the teams thinking like an abuser. So think of a Jordan Belfort example. Exercises to team build, but to get people to put their abuser hat on. Instead of sell me this pen, it's hack me this Apple Pencil, or equivalent. Once you've got into the mood, another exercise is to go over your product's features and ask why. It's easy to miss glaring weaknesses in the product design when you're deep in development. So step back and use the 5 whys deep assessment. Why does your product do that? Why is that necessary? Why did you design it that way? Just something I often ask. Why is it good or not? And why not do it differently? Because the point of this exercise is to identify the obvious weaknesses, because a hacker will notice them much faster than anybody would think. So now we've warmed up, what next? One of the first things that people think about when talking security is to talk about threat modeling.
So here's another security person talking about threat modeling. As an engineering technique, threat modeling is used to identify threats, to identify attacks, vulnerabilities, and countermeasures that you can put into place into your application. It tends to be an engineering technique. It's to help you inform your application design. And its objectives are to reduce risks. It asks 4 questions. So what are we building? What could go wrong? What are we doing to defend against threats? And have we acted on each of the previous steps? Again, you find them associated with things like Stride, Pastor, and Octave, as I sort of mentioned before. I'm not a big fan of this type of threat modeling. It can be really technical. It can be really intensive as a process. And we all know that as soon as security starts introducing highly technical, highly intensive processes, nobody wants to do them, not even us, to be honest. And so we all try and avoid it, and it just never gets done. But we recommend another way.
One technique we recommend to start with is called persona non grata, or PNG, which is easier to say. A PNG represents a typical user who behaves in unwanted or possibly nefarious ways. However, like ordinary personas, you know, if people have done product personas and things before, they have goals they wish to achieve and specific actions they will take to achieve those goals. Modeling PNG can therefore help us to think about the ways in which a system might be vulnerable to abuse and use this information to specify the mitigating actions. Obviously, you'll develop your other user personas for the genuine user of your system, and you should probably interview them and stuff like that and validate any segmentation of the audience and do all the stuff good user researchers do. But it's a bit more difficult to interview your persona non grata. They're not really going to make themselves available for interviews and give you the answers they want if they want to hack your system. However, this approach, if you get into that role play element of it, makes threat modeling more tractable by asking the team to focus on the attackers, their motivations, and their abilities. This could sound redundant if you're doing other threat modeling, such as Stride. However, Carnegie Mellon University did a study and found that PNG analysis performed consistently well across all teams, even in teams where there was much poorer performance using Stride. So this, in our opinion, is a good entry point into product security activities. You see there, we've got like a little card. We identify the persona, what they're trying to get out of it, a little bit of backstory, and the actual skills they use. So this is a good way of kind of starting with this. And the next technique is misuse cases. Now, I'm sure many of you use a good old-fashioned use case. Hands up who's done an old-fashioned UML use case? Oh, God, fewer than I thought. These are the expected good use cases, but based on what we've done so far, now we can start to map our persona non grata, our abusers, to what parts of the product they'll attack and how. So here we go, we've got customer and employee, and there's got a number of different actions you take. We can do this with misuse cases, which are the inverse of a regular use case, and describe the process of executing a malicious act against a system. Typically, you put them on the same diagram, like this. So here's our malicious hacker, cyber thief, and disgruntled customer. There's the things they'd like to do. And this, you can see, comes from the persona non grata. You can take the goals. So I think these are a good thing. It allows equal weightage for functional and non-functional requirements, but it also allows you to visualize them without going into the abstract world of security non-functional requirements. They emphasize security from the beginning of the design process and help avoid hasty design decisions. They're actually quite visual as well, so they cross the barrier between technical and non-technical quite well. And creating misuse cases often creates a chain reaction, which eases the identification of these requirements. The discovery of a misuse case will often lead to the creation of a new use case that's a countermeasure or a mitigation. It's difficult to see on this screen, but these are the bits for mitigation. However, they're not very suitable as a sole modeling tool, as they're quite high level and simple. And they don't really have any structured semantics, but they're an excellent place to start modeling your actual threats. After that, you can take some of your misuse cases and turn them into attack trees, which might drive out further details to the next step. So attack trees represent attacks against the system in a tree structure with a goal set at the root node and different ways of achieving that as leaf nodes. And this is the goal is we want to get money from the casino. So these diagrams, as shown here, can be used in both the requirements and design phases. So again, this is not very technical. What we're saying, well, what are the different ways to get money from casino? Well, you can get money from the registers. You can win money from the games by cheating or by getting really lucky. Or you can breach the vault by stealing the access codes, disrupting the power, blowing up the vault door. So these are all, you can imagine this in real life terms. And you can also add other details like the cost of an attack or the reward from a potential attack. And Microsoft use a similar diagram called threat trees in their threat modeling, but it actually adds the mitigating actions underneath as well. So we can't, unfortunately, go into a lot of time over how to build an attack tree today. But as you can see, they don't need to be technical, and therefore these can be done by the whole team as part of an exercise.
So how can you put all what we've discussed together so far? Well, I'm going to show you this. You might have these in your organization. I kind of hope you do. But security NFRs, non-functional requirements. They're as boring for me as a security person as they are for you to actually implement. They are often very abstract and not very friendly to actually implement. They can be very hefty to deliver in a 2-week sprint. I have really yet to see anyone deliver a security NFR in a 2-week sprint. Therefore, it is fodder to get dusty on someone else's backlog, and it never gets really picked up until the very end, and we all know that story about putting things at the very end. When it comes to security, it's costly, it's boring, and it's no fun. So let's move away from clunky NFRs to thinking about something that we're all kind of comfortable with, something more human, more familiar, and this is a standard user story. So we can take this standard user story and flip it to the dark side. So as a cyber security criminal, I want to steal credit card information so that I can make fraudulent charges. Now this changes that, which was the same security NFR before, into something much more readable. But not only that, it also enables you to be able to think, what can you achieve from this? It opens you out a lot more. Instead of saying, how can you do this within the PCI DSS framework, how can you achieve this more creatively? And with this, just like any other standard user story, you want to also have an acceptance criteria as well, which is a key element of it. So my recommendation to you, and it's something I've done in every organization I've worked in as a security person, is to do a workshop on refining your security NFRs. Get all together and start going through the huge spreadsheet, which I'm sure there's just loads of them on there, and start saying, how can we change these into abuse cases? Because then you'll find, actually, you can just pick up that abuse case and put it on your backlog like you would normally. And it won't just sit there like a traditional security NFR would. It'll be more digestible, and it'll give you more autonomy to solve problems your way.
Hopefully, we've convinced you that thinking like the bad guys is a fun way to problem solve. And we all love to solve problems in this industry. I mean, it's why I joined the industry. Which brings us back to threat modeling, which is one of the most important aspects of cybersecurity. However, it's often overcomplicated. The methods can be time-consuming and require a lot of expertise. And this complexity distracts us really from what we want to achieve with threat modeling. And it's just the process of asking a few simple questions of any system you're trying to build or extend. What is the system, and who cares about it? What does it need to do? What bad things can happen to it through attack or accident? What must be true about the system so it can still do what it needs to do, even when it's under attack? And we kind of played a trick with some of these techniques. These alternatives to Pasta, Stride, and Octave, they're actually all valid threat modeling techniques themselves. There's actually quite a lot of them. So what's the whole so well about this set of exercises? These exercises all work well together. Off the back of them, you'll have your owners and threat agents through PNG, assets, threats through misuse cases and abuser stories. They'll show some of the vulnerabilities, some of the countermeasures, and you can do all this more technical threat modeling later, but this completely supports it. And the reason we should do it is because it's progressive. It divides and conquers, and it keeps you focused and thinking at a single conceptual level for each exercise. It's breaking down threat modeling into its constituent parts and making it accessible for the whole team. Evaluating the various threat modeling techniques, it's found that Octave and Pasta are both considered difficult to learn and to use, and that's for people who are experts. Stride was intermediate for both, whereas things like PNG and misuse cases are considered both easy to learn and use for people even non-technical. So we've done some threat modeling through different means. Now what? Well, we need to put in our agile delivery lifecycle. This should obviously include thinking about things like a secure software delivery lifecycle, DevSecOps, tooling. But from a product security point of view, we can think in lean, agile ways to implement it as efficiently as possible. Because early is cheaper. Major security needs are identified already in requirements decomposition. It avoids bottlenecks because decision and risk approval is done locally. It reduces variability because threat analysis is business as usual. Security is addressed one line at a time, one story at a time, so you can be doing small batches. And the rapid feedback means we can do risk acceptance at the product owner level rather than going to another team. And it's decentralized, so every product owner can do it. And this scales naturally with no single point of failure, no squeezed security team looking stressed and saying no. But when it comes to writing your security user stories, our research has shown there is no common agreement on what good looks like. However, we would recommend describing requirements that focus on what should be achieved, not necessarily how. We can leave that to the NFRs.
Anthropologist hat on now. Building a security culture is really important, and in order to successfully apply the tools and techniques we've discussed so far, you're going to need to build it. And while the most effective way to build a good security culture is through top-down leadership, quite often CEOs don't really understand that there's value and quality in having a really good security proposition, apart from avoiding getting fines and things like that and reputational damage. They don't see it as a value offering. And also things like, so often the CISO is not actually part of the C-suite, and that sort of creates a disconnect there. So you're going to have a real challenge in your hands. But I'm hoping that from today, you'll start becoming really good allies to the security team, because we really need you. So how can you embed this for lasting benefit? People often ask me when I come do my consultancy as the Anthro Securist, and it's usually security teams that invite me in, and they say, I really want to improve the security culture in my organization. How can I start? Which team should I start with? I'm like, yourself. because there is no point in actually going out there talking about security if nobody will listen. So the security team is often the first point of call to actually build a good security culture. However, there is context around that. The security team is often the most underfunded, under-resourced, underloved area of the business. And what does that do to a function if they can't get any clout or buy-in from the people around them to do what they need to do for their job? And often I think the latest figure is something like 1 security person per 100 developer in the most resourced organization. So consequently, as this very, very stretched function, they have historically had to say no. And it's had to be really because of self-preservationist. Because how can I oversee an entire organization if there's only a few of us? And not only that, I have to be an expert in every single technology that there is. I can't just be a JavaScript expert. No, I've got to know everything there is to know about a technology stack and be able to protect it. So, as I say, let's see how you can be an ally. And I think you're going to actually love doing it as well. So I've been reading a lot this book. I don't know if anyone has read it as well. It's Drive by Daniel Pink. He talks about motivation and how motivation is the secret to high performance and success, both personally and in business. And he suggests that old ways of motivating, the carrot and the stick, so getting a bonus, rewards, targets, things like that, or punishment, just doesn't work, and in fact it actually hinders performance. So he suggests a new method, and it's Motivation 3.0, which has 3 essential elements. So the first element is autonomy, which is the desire to direct our own lives. Now, security teams are often a great example about people who do not want you to direct your own lives. They want to be in charge of everything. So they're the ones doing the bottlenecks. They're the ones that are saying, I'm the gatekeeper, you can only go past if I approve. And they see, so what you want to do is to make sure that you sort of seek autonomy, and it's important to fight for your autonomy even when the security team are saying no. So mastery is the next one. So mastery is the doing something that really matters to you and feeling like you're part of a bigger purpose. And it's really optimal when our expertise are matched to our experiences and our abilities. So in the context of this talk, you've really started your journey onto that mastery. And then finally, purpose. Feeling like you're part of something larger than yourself. And that with organizations been moving towards more autonomy and purpose-led maximizing organizations, you're going to have to start thinking more about that. So because the security team spends a lot of time thinking about risks and threats, it causes them to be overly suspicious. And I always remind the security team that bar a few edge cases, people come to work wanting to do a good job. They don't come into work to be inherently malicious and bring down all the systems. And I'm making the assumption that you're one of these people, and thus I would say that the need to be autonomous has never been greater nor easier. So you just need to convince the security team to loosen the reins a bit. And to achieve this, you need to start thinking about how do you prove to them that you can do this. So
once you evidence this enough times, small security decisions will lead to bigger ones. And this is where the mastery comes in, which, if you remember, is where your challenges are met with expertise. It stands to reason, then, that the more you master security, the more interesting challenges you'll come across and making your job more interesting. And finally, once the security team sees you as an autonomous and masterful ally, you can help them in the organization's greater purpose. And you can do this entirely selfishly, because if you're thinking about security in this way, you'll give your job more meaning.
And having more meaning means that you feel like you're making more of a contribution, which then increases your skills as well. So you'll have really good security skills, but also skills that are applicable elsewhere. And you'll also, again, be more self-directed, so you can work on your terms and start reflecting on that. So we're at the end of our talk now. Would you like to reflect on our key takeaways, Jeff?
Well, we'll hope you'll take some ideas about product security away from this today. But we feel like the 3 most important concepts are: 1, it's not all about the tech. Shift left into product security. Get everybody thinking like our abusers. 2, create a great culture around it. Remove barriers and gatekeeper mentality. With autonomy, mastery, and purpose, we can deliver securely every single time. And 3, keep it simple, cross-functional, agile, and iterative. Build this into your lean, agile discovery and delivery processes using mixed tools and techniques. And with these takeaways in mind, I want to leave you with one forgotten idea.
So the security function exists to enable the business to take risk. Security people often forget this, other people often forget this. Risk is not a dirty word. Risk is what happens to some of the most successful companies in the world. They are risk takers. The most successful people in the world are risk takers. Risk is good. It gives you that competitive edge when it's done right. So I would encourage you to take more risk. And I can't think of a better team than the security team to help you enable to take good, innovative risks. This whole thing is being about collaboration. I just want to leave you with one story about collaboration. In 1962, President Kennedy went to go visit NASA for the first time, and he was surrounded by the brightest people in the room, but then he saw a gentleman with a broom, and he says, "Oh, what do you do here at NASA?" The chap turned to him and said, "I'm here to help put a man on the moon." Now, that chap knew exactly what his purpose was. He knew that he needed to be there so that everyone could do their jobs better. He was the one cleaning up the trash so that they could do what they needed to do. But he was part of that bigger picture too, because without him, they couldn't get it done. This talk has been about reevaluating how you think about security. It's not about taking sides. It's not about being a security person. It's not about being an engineer. It's not about being a technologist. It's also not really about being a hacker or a goodie. It's about embracing all those sides, because the paths that lead us this way will always be happy paths. Hackers are using what makes us human against us. This talk has been about how we use what makes them hackers against them. Because when you follow the cables, every piece of that journey has connected to a person, to a consumer, a technologist, and even a hacker. And we should never lose sight of this. And I really encourage you to carry on fooling around and finding out. Thank you very much.